In today's lab, we're going to go through the concept of modularity when it comes to 3D modeling, and specifically in games. Modularity is kind of the secret behind how we can have very detailed environments in 3D space without overloading our systems. So if you are interested in level design or environment art, this is going to be the lesson for you. And this is going to be, concepts that you're going to be using throughout your career if you do go down that path. If you're not quite into environments, it's still a very important concept to understand because it really starts to expose you to ways that games are created and built together. So, we are going to first talk about what I mean by modularity and look at some examples. So I found this image on the internet of a 3D space of like a classroom where you might see this, in a game engine of all these, desks and chairs and walls and floors. And the way that this would actually be put together is you don't go into a program like Maya and you model the floor like a floor or all of the walls and all of these chairs individually. Instead, what you do is you make a modular kit. So this entire space was built just using these pieces. So the idea is that you just model a portion of the floor, a portion of the wall, one piece of the duct, one piece of the pipes, and you put these individual assets into your game engine. And then inside the game engine, you build your scene kind of like you're putting together. I don't want to say Legos. Legos are a little bit too granular, but almost like making like a little play set, like you're building a little diorama out of the little individual assets. So, one, this is very efficient for game engines. We'll discuss game engines further on in the course, but that is one of the reasons why we do this is it plays better with game engines. The other reason is it's a lot faster. It's a lot faster to build one panel and then take that into your game engine and just duplicate it a bunch of times versus trying to model out an entire room from scratch. So we absolutely would not want to do that. We want to find ways that we can build our pieces modularly so that we can speed up our process. So we have these pieces and it creates this environment. Here is another example of something that has a texture to it where we would create, our wall panels, our windows, our decals, our decorative pieces like these lights, and then we can stick them together and create an entire environment just out of those pieces. This does require a lot of planning. Usually you have to kind of figure out exactly what type of environment you need, and you need to then figure out what kind of pieces you need. So you do need to have a lot more forethought of what direction you're going to go in. So, we've kind of looked at, um, you know, the idea of modeling where you just kind of have like duplications of things, but what do we do when it comes to textures? So we've sort of actually worked with texturing concepts that are related to modular objects, and that is using our tileable textures. So if you think back to the beginning of our semester when we were just unwrapping two tileables, that is, where we would have like a tileable floor texture, a tileable wall texture, we would be putting those on our modular pieces. But what if you want something a little bit more detailed? Like you want, these stickers, you want like these pipes. This is where the idea of a trim sheet comes in. So a trim sheet looks usually something, this is a very simplified version of it, where the idea is that you have it tiling, at least on one axis. So if we think about the materials that we've been working with, and I'm going to use an example of a tileable that we're going to use in today's lab. This is kind of what we've been doing with a tileable texture. So I want to be kind of clear about some terminology. Other people might refer to things, using different terms. I'm going to try to use the terms as broad as possible and the way that I would like us for us to use them. When I refer to a tileable texture, this means a texture that tiles on all axes. So if we were to, slap this on a big plane, there wouldn't be any seams on the horizontal or the vertical. This would be considered a tileable texture. The new concept that we're bringing in is the idea of a trim sheet. A trim sheet, this is an example of one and one we're going to be working with, does have tileability. It should tile on one axis. So for instance, this one, if we were to make a really long plane, on our unwrap this way, it would be tiling in this direction. It most likely does not tile nicely in the other axis. So if we were to make a really large one, this would look kind of silly, on a very large plane because it does not really tile well this way, but it tiles nicely going this way. Sometimes you might be able to use a little bit of it across these different strips. Like, it might look nice in some instances to, have this piece and this piece together, and that's fine. But the idea of a trim sheet is that it's different trims that tile in one direction and most likely not in both. A lot of trim sheets will also have little areas, and this isn't a necessary part of a trim sheet, where you might have these individual pieces that don't tile at all, but they're kind of important, little details to creating your model. So for instance, it's the end of the wood planks, some little metal, doohickeys over here, and these, don't tile at all, but we would want them to be a part of this. Generally, these don't take up a lot of it. The idea, we're looking more at these trims. That's the whole purpose of a trim sheet. What if you do have a texture, that is mostly made up of these? For example, this, where it has maybe one thing that would be considered a trim, it tiles over here, but most of it is just made up of these kind of individual smaller things that do not tile at all. This is what we would refer to as a texture atlas. So a texture atlas, minimal to no tileability. Then we have our trim sheet, which, has a decent amount of tileability. Let me find the better examples. Sorry. Oops, 1 second. Our trim sheet has a decent amount of tileability on one axis. It may have some smaller areas that are characteristically more like a texture atlas, but this is a minimal part of it, kind of like this one. So this is our trim sheet, and then our our tileable texture is tileable in both axes. So 3 different types of texturing. Make sure you understand what those 3 different terms mean. So how do we actually work with these? I kind of alluded to it earlier that you almost have to work backwards. You have to be very thoughtful of what you're doing. You can't just really open up Maya and begin and model out some stuff and then go to Substance Painter and start applying materials, because tileable textures do not work correctly in Substance Painter. We can't texture them that way. You have to make your materials separately from Substance Painter and then apply them afterwards, because the way Substance Painter works is if you do have stacking UVs, it doesn't play nice. It ends up really funny. So we will not be using Substance Painter for this. Instead, what you do is you create your tileables, your trim sheets, your texture atlases first, and then you would model to them. It's kind of a process of you model and unwrap at the same time. Bonus, it goes a lot quicker in my opinion, so that if you are struggling with unwrapping, for some reason most people don't like unwrapping. I think it's a lot of fun. You honestly spend less time in that window when you unwrap as you go. So I do have for this demo some materials to work with that you should be provided, and I've been kind of showing them. We have this trim sheet. Oops, let me go close these out. We have this trim sheet. We have this wood plank. And we have this second wood plank so that we have 2 tileables and 1 trim sheet to kind of build a little scene out of. So let's begin. I have a new Maya scene, and I am going to create a plane so I can just create like a nice floor. I'm going to go over to my channel box. I'm going to go to my inputs, and this is kind of like a new way to do this if you did want to kind of try this out. I don't think we've shown this in the video, in any of the videos before, but the channel box can be an easy way to come into here and work with this to change our size. So width, I want this to be maybe 2 meters wide, so 200. The height, let's do maybe 500. So we're having kind of like a nice floor piece. And I don't need any subdivision axes on here. So those can just be 1 to 1. Since this is just going to be a floor, there's no reason to have any extra stuff on there. I am going to go ahead and rename this to floor. And I'm going to apply my first material. So I'm going to, go right click on it, assign new material, choose my Lambert, and I'm going to name this one wood plank 01. And I'm going to assign it that first wood plank material that I showed you. So wherever you downloaded that, I have this one on my desktop. Let's go to wood planks, base color. I did provide you with the roughness and normal maps if you did end up wanting to upload this to Sketchfab. That is not part of the lab, but if you did want to kind of play around with these materials some more, those options are there for you. So let me open this up. And I do need to turn on texture viewing in here. All right. So that is not very accurate looking because remember, if we go to our modeling, our UV space for this, since it is just a plane, it just kind of plopped it on, like this, and that's not really probably the textile density we want, nor is it the right orientation, possibly. I might keep it that way. We'll see how it looks. So the first thing we do need to fix is our textile density. Since we are working with nice numbers, this is a 2048, and we know that this is a 2 meter wide. So we can kind of play with our textile density numbers a little bit nicer. So we know it's a 2048. What would it look like if we do a 10.24 textile density? This would mean that this would fit perfectly on there. And does that look good? If we're struggling with understanding, sometimes it can be kind of hard to tell, eyeballing it. It's like, what is 1 meter? How does that actually look? One thing I do recommend is we can put a dummy person in here. This would be something that we never export out, but we can use it as kind of a reference for size. So let me fix the size to a width of 50, a height of 175, and a depth of 50. This is about a person height, and let's set that height baseline to the bottom. And this is about a person, so we can kind of determine if this looks accurate to us. So you know what, that looks pretty good. I think this is going to be a good textile density for these materials, where this looks like an accurate size based on the person. So let's keep going, and we have our floor done. So I'm going to hide the person. Let's kind of work on creating a wall for this now. I'm going to create a new plane. I need to go change its attributes. So let's make it a height of 500. This needs to be, how high a wall is. So maybe we'll try 300. We'll see how that feels. And I want to take off all of the subdivision axes for now. Oop, I don't like how that goes. Let me switch these around. Let me change this to 500 and this one to 300, just so I can easily put this at the bottom. And I can rotate this around. I can make sure my numbers are perfect by changing them here to 90 and 90. And let's move this so it's standing there. Negative 100 is where it should go. Let's turn my person back on. Does this feel right? I think it might be a little bit on the tall side. I'm going to make that just a little bit shorter. Let's make it a height of 250. Yeah, I like that better. Since it's kind of like an old pirate hull shack kind of material, it doesn't need to have a super tall ceiling. This feels a lot closer. I'm going to call this one wall. And let's assign it to our second plank material just to kind of get the ball rolling. So I'm going to assign new material. And let's get my trim sheet. Wood planks 2. And we can definitely see that that is not unwrapped correctly. So let's go fix that real quick. One, I do want to rotate it. And let's set that textile density. I think it's really wrong though. Hold on, let's do this. Let's do an unfold optimize. And then we will do a quick orient shell. And set that textile density again. Just make sure. And let's see. Oh, that looks so much better. Yeah, something was really messed up with that. If it ever looks wrong, visually, you can always turn on the checkerboard pattern and just double check your work. Oop, I'm upside down. Do you see that? Good thing I checked that because I probably don't want it upside down. Let me rotate it around. There you go. And we have our wall. All right, let's think about some ways now that we can use that trim sheet to add a little bit more interest to this scene. So if if we need to take a look at it, like you just want to kind of get it in the scene, one thing we could do is we can just create a dummy plane that is like a 1 meter, let's see here, 200 by 200 based off our textile density. Let's go to here, 200, and this is not meant to stay. This is just so we can kind of get our material into our area. New material. Close trim sheet. Oh, I forgot to name the other one. I should go back and do that, shouldn't I? There we go. Before I forget, let me rename this. It'd be easier to clear up my history to find that. Let's do history, freeze transform. There it is. This should be wood planks 2. It's important to name your materials or they will get lost. All right. So we have a lot of really fun stuff that we can work with this. And again, we don't need to keep this. This is just kind of here. Whoops. Fix the setting. There we go. This is just kind of here for us. So that if we just need to kind of look at what was there, we can kind of see how it works. So I really like this kind of darker wood down here. And I think what I want to do is I want to kind of make like a nice baseboard out of that. So what I'm going to do is just kind of cut in that detail. So I'm gonna hide this. I don't really need this. Like I said, this is just like a reference if I did want to look at it. Hold on. Let's see what I got in the program. You can always do that. If you don't want to do that, that's fine too. You just delete it. I'm going to cut in some detail into here so that we can add, add that baseboard in. So I'm going to use my insert edge loop, and I'm going to kind of eyeball that. So maybe we can see what it looks like right around there. I'm then going to select this plane. And if you did that plane like I did, just to kind of get the material in there, you can do this step the way I'm doing it. If you decided not to do that, you'll just need to create a new material and create that. But since I already created that, I can go to assign existing material and assign that trim sheet. It's very important that you don't just keep assigning new materials, new materials, new materials. If you've created it once, this is why it's important to name things. We need to just work with these 3 that exist. If you just keep creating new materials, when you export this out, it's going to think you have a whole bunch of materials on here when you don't. You need to make sure that you're just working with the minimal amount of materials. That's why this is important. So I'm going to set it to the trim sheet since I already made it. And then I'm going to go to my UV editor. And the nice thing about this is, I can see with this little button here, the little picture button, that texture on there. So let me first, it's a little crooked. Let me see if I can straighten this out. There we go. I'm going to grab that face and I'm going to detach it from the other one. So a couple ways we can do that. I like to use the shortcut Control-Shift-X to create my own UV island to pull it off. And then I can kind of move it wherever I want to on that trim sheet. I can even look at it on here to see, where it's at. So I can move it up and down. I can kind of get it to the top, but I kind of really want to line it up with the bottom. And I want to kind of fix the fact that, do you see how it didn't go all the way? Like I kind of eyeballed where that trim should go. I made a mistake, and that's fine. And it's not quite meeting there. So how do we fix this? This is actually a very easy fix. And it's I want to show this to you because this is going to come in handy, for multiple ways. First thing first, I'm going to save this. Whenever we're working with unwrapping, it's very important to make sure that you're saving constantly, because unwrapping is usually where I have Maya crash on me. If it's going to crash, it's going to usually crash with that UV editor screen open. So make sure you do save before you move on. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get my edge select. I'm going to select this edge. Before I move it though, because if I just move it as is, it's just going to stretch those materials, and that's not what we want. I'm going to double click on my move tool over here to open up this dialog box. And it has this really handy thing right here called preserve UVs. What happens is if I turn this on and I try to use my move tool, it's going to try to keep the UVs, with the same textile density and not squashed or stretched as I have it. So I can easily slide this up and down now. And you can kind of see it wiggle a little bit. But you know what? I'm doing this and I kind of actually like that. Like I like that extra little wood at the top that kind of acts like a stop for that. And I pulled that up. My UVs are consistent there. And we were able to fix it without having to try to remodel or redo things or anything like that. So now I have, using that trim sheet, a much more interesting look to this. So why don't we push this just a little bit? It's still very flat. It would be nice to, give this a little bit of depth. and not just have it be like this flat wall. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of use this as a guide to where I should put in some more geometry. So we can, for instance, bump out this wood right here. So I'm going to get my insert edge loop tool, and I'm going to eyeball this where I'm going to put it right here on this edge right here. I'm also going to put it down here where that separates out. And then I'm going to get my select tool and select those two polys. And first though, I do want to make sure I turn off this preserve UVs. Sometimes if you keep preserve UVs on when you're doing a move like this, it won't let you, like it'll snap back and say it can't perform that move because it can't actually preserve the UVs for what you're doing. So I got those. I'm going to hold shift and extrude these out. I'm then going to just grab this one, this poly up here, and extrude, hold shift to extrude that out too, so that I have that little bit of depth. I don't need these polys. I'm going to go ahead and delete them. And now I'm going to kind of refine this a little bit. So if we look back here, we can see that this is the area that we've been working in. So I'm actually going to grab all of those polys. We don't want them stretched like that. I'm going to detach them. And I am going to unfold and optimize those. Reset the textile density. I'm going to orient those shells. Okay. The textile density might need a little bit of tweaking for what we're doing. That's okay. I'm going to get rid of this one. I don't need this. I'm going to hold control, hit delete. And I'm going to move these around now to get it back kind of in position of this. So let's see. I know I need this one right there. Look right? No, it does not. Let me move this. I'm looking at it and kind of eyeballing, where is that? 1, 2, 3. Maybe something like that. I then need to move this one. I'm going to squish just a little bit. Just, you know, even though the textile density is going to be a little bit squished, it's such a small detail, that's fine. It just has like these weird pieces on here, so I'm just going to squish this down some. Actually, you know what? Let's do this. I'm going to grab this face, and I'm going to just grab that edge. I'm going to flip it upside down. It'll look a little bit better. So I'm using this tool to grab those. And watch this. It's hard to have both on the screen at the same time. I'm actually going to push it upside down. Then we're going to fix up these down here. Where's this one? It's so hard to show both of these at the same time. All right. So that's there. That's that one. That's this one. This one. Out here. And this one's just the underneath one, so it's probably fine where it's at. All right. I do want to bevel this edge though, because it does have like that nice curve in it, like you can kind of tell. So I'm going to select that and do a bevel. With 2 segments. I do want to make sure that these are smooth edged. I'll probably bevel, let's see. I'll probably bevel these 2 just slightly. Just to kind of take it off a little bit. It is older wood, so it would have a little bit of a bevel to it. You know, it's not sharp like a piece of metal. There we go. We have a nice sort of bumped out piece of wood that looks a little bit, you know, we want that 3D-ness. We can add a little bit more detail down here. Let's do the same thing kind of for this piece of metal. This inner part here, I just kind of want to extrude inwards, like this piece, like you can kind of see it. So let's get our connector. I'm going to click here. I'm going to also click, probably here. Let's do it here. Yes, we'll do it there. I'm going to grab this face. I'm going to hold shift and extrude it inwards a little bit. I do not need these pieces on the ends. Let's go to our unwrap for this. We can do an optimize. I'm going to orient the shell and make sure the textile density is good. It did, you know, change it a little bit, and that's fine. We're going to go back and tweak this now. We just wanted to make sure it wasn't super stretched in any weird direction. So let me slide this kind of back. And this is where we might need to kind of tweak things a little bit. So I'm going to grab this face. I'm going to slide that back up. We're then going to grab this edge, slide it up. Same thing here. I'm going to bet that it's a little bit stretched underneath, and that's fine. We'll just stretch it back down. Oh, no, I don't think it's too bad. I think this one turned out pretty well. But, you know, this is where, like, yes, everything should be pretty uniform with our checkerboard, but little tiny details, if you tweak them just a little bit, like, it's not the end of the world if they're just a little bit kind of slightly stretched, we'll say. When you start getting more into working with trim sheets, you can do some pretty crazy things by doing stuff like that. Let's bevel these edges now. Bevel this one. And this one. Maybe not so much, maybe like a 0.3. And let's make sure that those are soft edges. There you go. Getting some dimensions to this. We would want to do it probably more. Probably honestly, I would want to come in and work with these two. We could easily come in and like extrude out these to give it some more depth, because those definitely feel like they deserve it, because it's, you know, it would add a lot of dimensionality to this. But I think as far as this video goes, this is enough to kind of get you started working with the concept of modularity in trim sheets. So I'm going to just show you one last thing, but if you do want to kind of, you know, experiment around with this, I do recommend it. This is a nice little set, so that's why I did provide you with the normal map and the roughness map, in case you do want to play around with it and upload it to Sketchfab on your own. Maybe you make a nice little scene for your portfolio. So one of the nice things about this modularity set is, since we did build it with nice numbers, is that we can, if we just duplicate this, we can easily extend this out to be a larger scene, as much as we want. So like, we can make this hallway as long as we need to. If you build these nicer too, we could, for instance, rotate this around. Oops, that's the wrong axis. I always do that. And, we could make a nice little corner piece. These aren't going to line up super well just because, this is meant to be a straight piece, but it wouldn't be hard to come in and create like a little corner, like wood plank thing that just sits at the corner to kind of hide that seam. And we can make endlessly large environments utilizing just a couple pieces, as well as materials that have a nice textile density, rather than trying to unwrap an entire environment onto a single unwrap.